Press record. All right. Okay, let me pull up a page here that I've put some prompts on, and I am assuming that everybody has been able to finish the book. Let me pull this up here real quick. Then I'm going to share my screen. Welcome, Caleb. And hello, Laleen. Let's see, let me share my screen. And then go like that. And then we'll go like that. All right. So these are the discussion prompts that I came up with. There was a lot covered in this last section of the book. So it talked about, social interactions, how conversations change when conducted on the internet. It had a whole chapter on memes. And then it had kind of an idea for a new metaphor of language, which I thought was pretty compelling. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. I'll just read these to you real quick, and then we could just do what we've done before. We can just start and chat with whatever, wherever you want to go. So the first question, this is just a quote from the book. So, and this is from the chapter 6 about the how conversations change. So it says, consciously or not, a lot of our social media posts are optimized around getting some kind of interaction. We may fuss over the precise wording for maximum humor, run a draft post by a friend, message specific people to get them to comment, plan the posting time for the most interactions, or simply like others' posts for moral support, so our friends know they aren't shouting into the void. And when I read that, I was thinking, as somebody who teaches writing, I was thinking, all of these activities demonstrate sophisticated critical thinking and reading and continuous rhetorical analysis, considering purpose, author, audience, and genre. And I'm just curious what thoughts you have that might raise for you. The next one is about the meme chapter. So I have a 15-year-old son, and he's completely internet culture, and I don't really understand a lot of memes, and he's just laughing away half of the time. And so that was a very useful chapter for me. Or it says, a meme in the internet sense isn't just something popular, a video or image or phrase that goes viral. It's something that's remade and recombined, spreading as an atom of internet culture. Creating, sharing, or laughing at a meme is staking a claim to being an insider. I am a member of internet culture, it says, and if you don't get this, then you aren't. So it's like the inside joke of the internet. And I've got 2 links here. This is just a very funny video that really sort of explained how I understood memes until, maybe about a year ago. And then this is a link to the online database of Know Your Meme. Then for the second to last chapter, or for the last chapter, I thought that maybe we could talk about this quote. Here perhaps is the greatest impact that the internet can have on the English language as a new metaphor. And basically she was looking at, is your metaphor for language, is it a book or is it a network? And so what is your metaphor for language, and how does that impact how you see things? Then finally, because this is now a what's it called? A learning and action committee circle. Yes, community. That's what it was. We need to ask a question about, like, how might you go forward with this? So I just asked the basic question of, how can you use anything that you've learned, realized, discovered, or had confirmed by this book in your work, teaching, research, advising? What positive impact can you take from this? Or what negative impact can you take from this? So what I'll do now is I'll just open it up, and anybody who wants to chat should chat. I can click on these links if you want to see this, if you want to see this funny thing here, if you want to look at Know Your Meme, or anything else that stood out to you in the book. Let's just go for it, okay?
Well, one thing that I will use from this book after reading the memes chapter and kind of having this existential crisis is too extreme, but having this feeling of, wow, do I really understand the memes that I think are funny and share? Like, I think they're funny. So does that mean I get them? Or maybe I'm laughing at the wrong thing? I don't know. But I remember my first year teaching, I included a meme as like a visual aid. I don't even remember the specifics, but I remember that it didn't really seem to go over very well. Like nobody thought it was funny. And after reading this chapter, I thought, oh, well, that's why, is because the people that already know what it is are not going to be impressed by me sharing it. And the people that don't know what it is aren't going to get it. Like that is, this is not the place for it. So I'm not going to use memes in my teaching. That's what I've learned. And I'll keep sharing them and laughing at them. And, you know, if I get it wrong, I guess hopefully someone will have the heart to tell me. But
so if you laugh at a meme, aren't you part of the joke?
well, I think so.
Yeah.
I just think like, because some of these memes that I think are funny and I've seen them over and over again, but like I don't know the actual origins necessarily. Like
Well,
the
let's
distracted
look.
boyfriend meme, for instance.
Let's look. So I'm going to go to Know Your Meme, okay? And I find this the least intuitive website ever. Hang on. Okay, but what's it called? It's called Distracted Boyfriend, right?
Yeah. So
Okay.
for instance, I think that one's just pretty funny a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I've seen it a lot. I get the joke, but I don't know where it started. So does that mean I don't really know?
I don't think it does
Right?
me. I don't think it does, because I think it's the idea that it's this atom that like bounces around the internet and gets repurposed and rejoked. And but this Know Your Meme, if you know the one that you're looking for, it can be interesting because it will show you the history of it. And so it is kind of funny. So, Distracted Boyfriend, also known as Man Looking at Other Women, is an object labeling stock photo series in which a man looks at the backside of a woman walking by while another woman, presumably his romantic partner, looks on disapprovingly. And so, and then it goes through the origin. I guess it was just from iStock. And then apparently it started with a Phil Collins meme. So this was pop, prog, and Phil Collins. I don't know what that means. Like, I don't get that. But then it starts to switch. And so like the youth, capitalism, socialism, and it just becomes this thing like like, and you can just add all these different things on it. Um and so, and I guess here's the other ones from that group, photo series compilations. And then I think that it can like then develop from these as well. So why this one caught hold, I have no idea. But if it makes you laugh, then you're part of it. But like this one, um, this is fine. I mean, this is one of the most famous memes, the "This is fine" meme. And it came from this small little comic strip. But then what developed from it was just these two panels here. It merged into this, and then it became more, and then it became even more, and people started messing with it even more. Um, and then there's a video game apparently. so and so so it's really interesting. So what I'm curious, so hey Lolene, can I pick on you a little bit? And can I ask you if you've seen any of these? And Lolene, you're muted if you're talking. Okay, so she may not be present right now. So, but what is this? So like, what do the memes teach us about like how our students interact with text?
Hi guys, it's Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, I just have to tell you something funny that with this meme, I just pulled because I'm working at home, I pulled my son over while you were scrolling through and I said, do you recognize this? And he said, Oh, Mom, that's old stuff. That's old news.
Exactly. Hmm.
So something that is going through my head right now is I know when I work with students at the library, they like struggle to come up with a research idea or like get a direction for whatever project they're working on if it's very broad and like, oh, you know, do a paper on an issue that's important to you. So I think something with meme culture that's interesting to me is like someone else usually starts with the idea and then you just kind of spitball and keep it going. So they're adding their own spin on it when they're like changing the text, but they didn't have to do the hard work of like coming up with the initial idea, which I think
Oh.
maybe it's easier to adapt someone else's work than to start something from scratch for a lot of people. That's
But isn't that what
what
we're
I'm
doing with
thinking.
research anyway? Unless it's original research?
It is, and maybe that's just not communicated to our students. It's like, you're not the first one to look at climate change. Don't stress out too much.
Because like somebody who does this, so if I go back to the "this is fine" meme, and whoops, here it is. If I go back to this one, and somebody's taken, you know, the original and has developed it into this, and then they're commenting on it and they're mutating it, and then they even do this. I mean, that's like, I don't know, maybe I'm stretching the metaphor too far. I mean, could we use meme culture to help students understand how to participate in a larger public dialogue or a larger public conversation? Go ahead, anybody, just speak.
I think that could be really useful in the sense that, this kind of plays on I think it was the fourth question that you asked about, or the quote that you had about, is it a book or or the third one, is it a book or is it a network? Where if, like, what I try to do is if I can get my students to look at reading and writing as having a conversation, okay, yes, you have to read Aristotle, but you get to talk back to him and you get to argue with him and you get to, have that interaction, then that's opening things up rather than here's the book, you have to understand it. It's no, fight back. What is he saying that you don't like? What is he saying that you do like? So I think it could be useful in that regard.
What about Lolene? You had your microphone off for a minute. Did you want to say something?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This chapter was very confusing to me. I read it and reread it. I'm not sure. I'm listening closely because I'm not sure how I would ever use it in my classroom. I like what Christine just said about you can argue with Aristotle. I try to get my students to think about how they can respond to what they're reading. Like we just finished Thucydides on the Peloponnesian War. That's a tough read for me, never for, the excerpt I gave the students. So the memes, I'm not sure. I'm just not comfortable with a lot of the material. I'm still processing a lot of it that I've read in the book. I might have to read it again and go back to your prompts and try to maybe in writing address some of the things that you've raised. So that's as honestly as I can tell you.
Well, it's taken me.
That's where I am right now.
It's taken me a while to grasp memes. And because it's like, because so many things are memes. And so it's a meme is more of a concept rather than a specific concrete document that you can touch or see or feel or that type of a thing. So it took me a while to wrap my head around it. And I think it was in this book when it helped me to understand when it's like a meme is like an inside joke. And so, or it's like an in-group joke, or it's an in-group thing. There was one line in there where it was, I pulled it out, but then I tossed it away. It was something about a meme is like that feeling that you have when you see old friends and you immediately can start talking about shared topics, or like you kind of like there's this sense of recognition. And so it's I kind of have had to let go of trying to, it's weird. I've tried to let go of understanding it completely, and now I understand it a little bit more, if that makes sense. So one thing I'm wondering with what like Christine and Lillian are saying about like how to get students to engage with the material, this idea just came to my mind. I mean, I'm sure that people have done this, but what about engaging with Aristotle through Twitter? Like, what if they had to put Aristotle's main arguments, you know, or you know, some of the main things in a Twitter stream, and then they had to respond to them in Twitter? I don't know. I mean, would that get them to engage more? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I even think having them create memes, that sounds kind of silly, but if we're understanding memes as like this insider versus outsider culture, and how I thought it was so funny how she turned the Ryan Gosling meme into like a debate group meme. She was talking about that. I think you could do a similar thing with Aristotle or any topic or subject that you're working on, right? Because in order to enjoy the meme, you have to have enough understanding of the topic to be able to engage in that kind of sense of play for it to be funny. But you also have to know your audience incredibly well, like who's going to pick this up and laugh at it, right? Okay. So I think it's a really great actually a really great rhetorical exercise, because you're asking them to do a lot of things. And if you had them share it with the class, then I think it would be a riot, right? Because you're all insiders to whatever it is that you're talking about, as well as if they were able to summarize their thesis or something, like turn your thesis into a meme, right? Then I feel it would help them join the conversation in a way that's very casual, very simplistic, but could break it down really easily, kind of like you're saying with these, like if you were teaching Aristotle in tweets. So
for those of us that, okay, so I thought I had my head wrapped around memes, but now I'm confused again. so how would students create a meme? Like, would they have to have a shared like meme base that they started with, and then they would mess with it, or would they just all bring in something, assuming that everybody else in the class would have access to that shared knowledge of the meme?
I think that's
you could
part
do a
of
couple
the
things.
sorry. Just one thought related to the book there. I think the book talked about that's part of it, right? If you have to say, oh, do you all agree with this? You're already out. Like, you should know what would hit the stride, right? And you do it based on collective knowledge. So it's like, I mean, I don't know why Ryan Gosling stands out here. It could be many different people. Like, I'm thinking, like, if you're trying to say something serious, maybe in a lighter tone, I would think Darth Vader is a good example, right? Because everybody knows who he is and what he's supposed to represent, and then things coming out of his mouth is incongruent with what he's saying. But then, like, me trying to explain it to you feels redundant. Like, I shouldn't have to do that. So in my mind, it's like, oh, this should work, so I'll just do it. And then you should be able to just understand it. But I mean, I think part of it is the democratization process of this, that the benefit of the internet, if you say something that's not meaningful, it gets drowned out immediately. It won't get passed around. But if it's meaningful, it'll stick around. So the product we see are actually already been peer reviewed for so many times. So I think it's a self-selection process. So it makes you more attuned to what kind of things people are looking for, and makes the selection better in that sense. But I don't think you can purposely artificially create it to make it popular. What would you add, Amanda?
Oh, I was just going to say I forget what the website is, but there are all different kinds of meme generators where you can take those like stock photos that I think everyone's familiar with. Like, Just an example, this whole year to me has been like a bad luck Brian meme, right? Where it's like something good happens and then you're like, oh, but the COVID, right? So it's like you finally get to something good, but the COVID ruins it, right? So it's like a bad luck Brian over and over. And I think if people have those kinds of connections, they'll already have in their mind, especially if they know the material and they know their audience, then I think they'll be able to pick up on what meme would be a good one to just change the text to or
Okay.
manipulate.
I'm looking for bad like Brian. Is this bad like Brian? Okay. So bad luck Brian. Sorry. Okay, so if we look up bad,
I'm so glad I wasn't the only one that had to ask what that was.
let's see, view all
I have
memes.
no idea either.
Oh, I can't spell. Hang on. There we go. Oh, okay.
I
And
shared
then
a
you can-
link to also classical memes for Hellenistic teens.
Oh, you're kidding. Okay.
Their Facebook page is pretty good. I just found the Twitter and it's not hitting the spot for me right now, but
Okay, hang on. Let me go
It
find
exists.
the chat. Okay, so Christine, so this is, oh, Hey Girl librarian version. Okay, hang on. Hang on. So hold on, my chat's in the way. So, Hey Girl, I like the library too. Hey Girl, you know I would never publish anything but in an open access journal because changing the existing Okay. And then Christine, there was this one.
yeah, so I follow them on
Classicals.
Facebook and
Whoa.
sometimes they're really funny.
I'll just scroll through this a little bit. Lolene, can you see this?
Yes,
Do you get this? Because see, I don't even get this.
I don't.
Achilles makes his men drive around Patroclus' corpse before they can rush from the battle. Achilles, Patroclus' ghost, the Myrmidons who just want to eat lunch. Okay. And Zeus. Okay. Whoops. Someone refers to Hades as the god of death. Thanatos. Does anybody get that one? I don't get that one.
Thanatos is the actual god of death. Hades is king of the underworld.
Okay. Okay.
Whoa,
Gotcha.
that's deep.
Okay. And then I think Achilles is a himbo. Yeah, this could be kind of fun. This could be kind of fun.
I compare this kind of humor to like the humor that is in Seinfeld. Like there's nothing going on, but it's all hilarious. You know what I mean? It's like, and some people just never could hook on to Seinfeld. There wasn't enough of a storyline or I mean, it was just like too blah. There wasn't a rising action and I mean, there was, but it was so everyday that some people didn't like it. But I think it's the stupidity kind of maybe. It's just the irony in things or that they're taking the little bit of like just stupid dry humor that really is what makes us smile in life. We usually don't go around telling full-on jokes to each other. I mean, some people do, but most of the time it's just like the raise of an eyebrow when someone does something that, you know, you all know in the room that is funny. But anyway, I just think it's the little tiny sly humor is, I mean, that's what I get from memes. And I don't really look at memes that much, but I should, because these are making me laugh, especially the librarian.
I think that's such a great comparison because, yeah, it is. It's just people kind of sitting around being smart, but also being dumb. Like, because you have to know things like what open access resources are to get it.
Right.
But also you're being kind of dumb about it, right?
So, Lolene, do you teach history or humanities?
History. Well, I taught humanities for a few semesters, but history has been my
okay. And
subject.
Artie, you teach history. Okay. And I'm assuming that you're like memes, what in the world? So I'm going to open up some history memes. 62 hilarious history memes that should be shown in history classes. I'm assuming this is saying. So let's just take a look at this. Okay. Okay, so whenever the US tries to intervene in the Middle East, we did it, Patrick, we saved the city. Okay, and that's SpongeBob. And there's a lot of SpongeBob memes, right? Okay. What? Those girls who prefer hanging out with males because guys don't start a drama have clearly never picked up a history book. Okay, I get that one. Archie's like, no. What is Europeans when they found new land? Okay, yeah, all right. Okay, so, go ahead, Archie.
For me, these memes, I mean, frankly, I've not seen a single one that we've been seeing so far.
You haven't seen one?
I haven't seen any of these. I mean, none of these, like since whatever 10 minutes that we've been looking at memes. I don't know. I've not seen a single one. So I'm not into memes at all. I don't get memes. I think people, who know me never send me memes. So it's, for me, I find these very frivolous. I mean, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking,
Yes.
how do I put this in a history class? I mean, see,
Well,
for me,
would this help students, like, so that this one's Switzerland during both world wars, would this help them understand it?
No.
Yeah, I think they would.
Yes.
This is a political.
I would as a student.
for myself first, or I don't know. I don't get this kind of humor. I guess my idea of humor is where it makes me laugh. The humor which is like very interpretative. Some find it, some don't. I don't get it.
Okay.
I
would
don't see
never
how
use
these are that much.
The
It's like,
Winter Teen example.
setting like a really dramatic story, like story time or something. It's like super dramatic, and then at the end, it's just like
Say that again.
It strikes me that here's a bunch of academics sitting around trying to understand an element of culture that we seem to have no experience with.
Some of us do.
And
Some
some
do.
of us, obviously, some of us do to varying degrees. But what occurs to me is we're having students come into our classrooms and we're expecting them to interact with elements of culture that they have no experience with. And so if there's a way to help bridge the gap, I mean, I'm coming with all sorts of ideas how I can implement this in my class. And I also have 3 teenagers, so I'm getting steeped in meme culture kind of by osmosis or something. But I think it's brilliant. And the other thing that comes to mind is like this, we hold the ancient writers and philosophers up on some sort of pedestal, but really what they're offering isn't much better than meme culture. And so I think if we can start to recognize the benefit of the meme culture and take a little bit less serious some of the things we think are really important, I think we'd find a better way to reach our students.
Can I interject here for a minute?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm just sitting here applauding Artie like mad. I find it frivolous too. And I understand what this gentleman just said, but the way that I teach history, I call it his or her story, the human story. So I'm trying to encourage the students to suspend their 21st century mindset and go back in history and try to feel or see or think the way the people and the events that we're studying, how events influence the people and their feelings. And again, in fact, I'm just reading now their ePortfolio signature assignments, and I'm getting reflections that say that they do in their analysis, in their essays, they are to some extent, and this is certainly not all of them, but the students who were engaged in the course are saying that they do understand because of this and this and this. Without a meme,
Mm-hmm.
there just really aren't any memes in any of these papers and anything I use in the classroom. But I think the reflection, it gives me some insight into whether or not they have been engaged in the subject matter. And I'm really quite pleased with it. So I know that makes me old fashioned. There's one paragraph in that last chapter of the book, and I thought, yep, that's me.
What was the paragraph, Lillian?
Oh, then I left the book downstairs, but she's thinking about it determines if you are engaged, then you are, and if you aren't, then you aren't. You know, I could go get it, but maybe while somebody else is talking.
Was it around this in this number 3 about that if your metaphor of language is a book, then you see language in this particular way, but if language is a network, like that this shifting metaphor, because I think I'm in between those. I'm sort of, I mean, I'm 52. I'm not like, I'm sort of into the internet, but sort of not. And so I'm in that kind of like fulcrum position where I'm interested in it and I'm interested in the change, but I still am like, but language is this. But then I also have linguistics training. So I think that it's like this. So, but there was some line in there that said something like that. Yeah, if you're
something
this.
very similar to that, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, when we first started this discussion, I mean, if you look at the chapter titles, the first chapter says informal language. And I understand that, but someone made the comment that, or I don't know, maybe it was you, Tiffany, that one of the premises of the book is that the internet has improved writing.
Made it more dynamic. Yes, made it more dynamic and more alive. Yeah, more nuanced, more dynamic. And we've done things with writing that we've never done before.
Can you give me an example of that?
So I think one thing I think was very interesting was in the chapter 6 about the social conversation and chat, is that we now have written, we now are conducting completely informal conversation through writing. And in order to do that, we've created all of these different ways to manipulate text and image to represent informal conversation. And that had never been done before. Now, does that mean that has influenced and improved formal writing? No, not necessarily. Like formal writing is kind of over here. It's kind of doing its thing. But what I think her primary argument is that language is changing, as language always changes. It's never not going to change. But now, because it's such a textual space, we're having to make changes to our written language, and those changes to the written language may eventually democratize or, make more available writing skills and writing abilities to a broader population than that which we already had, because more people belong to the world of writing now than did before, because everybody's writing. And everybody wasn't writing all the time before.
Well, I went through a lot of documents, a lot of writings on the internet. And what I'm doing, and I just realized that as you gave your explanation, I'm applying the rules of formal writing to informal writing. But comments on YouTube videos, as I looked at, just for an example, I read the text of Giuliani's press conference, so it raised such an outrage. I've read official government documents. There is a very big difference between formal and informal, and I didn't see that informal writing on the internet had improved very much. I didn't see it as dynamic. I saw it as lazy.
Okay.
None of the structure of grammar, punctuation, or very little of it. Especially if you look at people who are commenting. I even went to a recipe website because I was looking for a recipe, and even the reviews were, I thought, geez, doesn't anybody know how to write anymore? Am I really just I don't know. I feel less competent now than I did before I read the book
Oh, Lilene, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
in
Well,
terms of what I'm trying to achieve with writing in my classes and even in my letters and cards and emails and texts. I really take care to try to do it the way I've been taught, I guess. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And what I heard you say at the very beginning is that your norm is the formal writing standards.
It is.
And you've applied that norm to all this different type of writing that's occurring on the
Exactly.
internet. So, and I think I did too. And I think I'm slowly starting to shift. I'm very, very slowly starting to shift and trying to say to myself, okay, those comments that are on, websites or on recipe things or whatever, that's not formal writing. But then what you'll see in those comment strings is people will, if somebody has a typo or if somebody does something grammatically incorrect, people will attack them for that. So it's not like you're alone or I'm alone still wanting to see formal writing standards in this informal writing. It seems like in areas like Twitter and texting and such that it seems like I don't know, do people get slammed for not having good grammar on Twitter?
I don't do Twitter.
I don't think as much as
I have
before.
no idea.
I don't feel as much as before. And I would say, I hear what your discussions are about, but I wonder too, right? Like if I'm writing something online, why should it be formal? Right? If the goal is to get information, wouldn't the fastest, most effective medium would be the more important piece rather than how to write it, right? And especially when English is not my first language, I especially get annoyed when people pick on my grammar, right? If you're trying to get the idea, if you got the idea, doesn't matter if I use the right tense, right? So I can't remember if we talked about that here or maybe some other context, how the White House used to do their press conference in its formal way, like writing it out and then inviting journalists to come in and then tell them. But what they realized is that's not what people want today. People want instant update. And the way to do that is you just publish it on Twitter. Because by doing that, people are able to cite it, able to get information much faster, rather than having to sit there and going through the formality of how the language is being put together and trying to get what they're trying to read here. So I don't know. I feel like we are the establishment here. We're the dictionary that's being talked about in this book. And we're fighting against the democratization of language, which is this constant evolvement of change, that it's gonna happen whether we let it or not. And if we don't, we just continue to build up this wall and let other people expand their territory. We can either join it or we can just continue to build up our own wall. That's how I feel about that.
I speak in favor of one thing about formal writing in response to what you've just said. And I've read a lot of tweets, particularly of the presidents. I've read other tweets that are online, but they don't do what I think writing should do, which is give some indication of reflective thinking. Words matter. Words have power. Words, I mean, look at our society today. Words really determine how people feel and respond to things. And if we don't think before we speak, or if we don't think before we write, then the consequences can be entirely different than anything we want. And I just have such a strong belief in the power of language that I don't want it to become, I guess I don't want it to become democratized to the you can just say anything you want without taking responsibility for it, or write anything you want.
That's making a lot of sense. I see Christine and then Amanda. Everybody check your chat as well, because Amanda has put something in there as well. And this is such a good conversation. I will try to print this chat as well and send it around. Okay, go ahead, Christine.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love Amanda's comment as well. I think she asks really good questions. So yeah, I agree with both sides of this. And here's why I say that. I do think there is a place for formal writing. I think that so what I try to tell my students, and I'm teaching humanities, I'm not teaching writing, and I tell them that. I say I'm not an English teacher. I'm not going to be correcting your grammar. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the content and the ideas. A lot of students really struggle with getting out ideas because they're trying to put it into, I mean, there are some that just don't seem to know or care about the form of their writing ever. But there are a lot that are, they feel inhibited getting out their ideas because they're trying to put it in that formal structure. And if any of us write, I certainly write a lot, that can be a barrier for me too. You need to have that rough draft where you're just saying what you think. And so I think that it's not so much this, oh, we're doing away with formal writing in favor of informal writing, as like thinking about that context of where is this writing being placed. And so when the student is talking in class, or when they're turning in, because I have the informal writing assignments they do every week, just reading responses, that can be informal, because that, I just want you to just get your ideas out. When you move into the end, we get to the end of the module, and now you're taking all those informal writings and turning it into a formal paper. That's the time to start paying attention to those formal conventions. And what I try to say is, you know, you will be able to put your point across so much more strongly, so much more convincingly, if you can craft it, if you can reflect on it a little bit, make sure you see where you're going. And yeah, I think it's worth reading what Amanda said out loud, because she's echoing, I feel like, or she's saying a lot of the same things that I am trying to say.
Amanda, do you want to read it out loud so it's in your voice?
Sure, I can. I just typed it out because I didn't want to forget my question. But yeah, so I mean, if students can understand memes as a democratic way to join the conversation, which I really think it's an accessible way for them to join the conversation, it can help them understand academic writing as a form of communication or conversation as well, because that's what it is. And if you understand an argument well enough to simplify it into a meme based on your audience, you can write an essay defending your position, certainly. But the question that I have is, if we understand language using the metaphor of a network that is continuously in flux, and that there is space for everyone in this glorious linguistic web, how can we grade student writing? I feel like it was mostly the kind of conclusion to her book, the new metaphor, that really kind of made me question my role as kind of in this grading process. Because I mean, is the goal for academic writing to become more accessible? Are we wanting more people to be able to participate? Or are we supposed to maintain this separation, right? That this informal writing happens elsewhere, even if they're essentially having the same conversation. Are we supposed to enforce that separation, or are we supposed to make academic writing more accessible?
It's a great question. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, what is, I mean, all these different audiences and contexts for all this different types of writing. I mean, what is, you know, the gate of academic writing? What are we either preventing students from entering, or what are we inviting them into? And I don't know, what thoughts do you all have on that?
Oh, I didn't know I was unmuted. Sorry. Is my I do have something to say, but I just went to unmute myself and realized I was unmuted, and I've had this conversation going on around my house looking for something. So I hope that I didn't interrupt. I apologize if I did. I just have a couple of comments. First of all, I think part of the one way to listen to, or to think about informal writing, is to think about informal speech. And the way that, like, when I make a phone call to someone, I don't worry about, even if it's well, I mean, I guess there are times when we use informal speech and we just don't And it's not just with friends, like even like, oh, I'm not making myself very clear, but I think that the idea is that informal writing and informal speech, if we're standing in a grocery store line, we don't turn around to correct someone's grammar that behind us said, that they didn't conjugate their verb correctly. But we're doing
I do.
that
No,
in
just
writing. Okay, if you do, Tiff, I'm not gonna. And I think if we think that we should, we're kind of playing this police. And I think this police is kind of what we're doing in a way academically. But I get that there is some level that we have to show them. There are different levels. I don't want it to be hierarchical, but just different platforms of language. Yes, there's going to be formal language, formal writing, but I was listening to something the other day, and very few people ever read academic writing. What was I listening to? I can't remember what it was, but very few people ever read academic writing. Like if you write for a journal, your audience is so small that really you're insignificant. Your voice is insignificant. But if you write it into a book, what book were we just talking about? I can't remember what it was, but like this, she probably has research on these things that have been put into academic journals that none of us would even bother to read. But when she puts it into a book for the mainstream, then people want to engage with it. And I think in a way, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about this idea that we're making it available to the masses. Now, that doesn't mean that the masses cannot go to the formal if they want, but why are we the gatekeepers to that? And really, when you look at our graduation rate, if we stop people from writing because they don't write in a formal way, we really are stopping. I mean, our graduation rate, isn't it like 20% or something? Like 80% of our students then will never get into the club, so to speak. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but that's the democracy that's involved here, I think, is really how do we let more people in, but still have a level of academic writing that is still there, but we have more in the middle. I'll stop.
Jen is applauding.
I think those people are coming in regardless of what we do or say is the thing. It's almost like there can be there's like an alternate to academia out there. And so so to the earlier comments about still wanting there to be a respect for language because it's so powerful, the issue isn't the informal language. The issue is the fact that it can be broadcast to millions and even billions of people so easily, right? So the informal language is going to exist regardless. And I think that point of who the gatekeeper gets to be and whether or not the gatekeeper should even exist is really important. And to some of the earlier comments about for people for whom English is their second or third or even fourth language, right? The critique of language needs to take into account the linguistic and cultural background of the people that are engaged in it. And I think we can change the definition of formal language.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to take off of that and bring it back around to something that Lolene said about the concern about people being able to share language without like reflection or without, without critical thought, and in some ways, I don't know that it's as much about sending the language, sharing the language without that critical thought as it is ingesting the language without critical thought. And so I want to kind of jump to Jamie here for a moment because like you referenced Trump's tweets that, get out there and people are absorbing, and there's so much out there right now that is untrue and people aren't necessarily critically reading it. And I think, Caleb, maybe that's what you were saying, like people have access to just broadcast to, hundreds of thousands of millions of people. And I do think that part of the part of our challenge, maybe part of our role in academia now, is to really help students critically ingest or critically take in that language that's being used out there. Jamie, what thoughts do you have? And we've got just a couple more minutes, but I want to get Jamie's thought on this, because I believe that librarians are our new superheroes in this era that we're in.
Yeah, I don't know that we're superheroes. I think librarians have been thinking about this and trying to help people fight fake news and all these other, all the misinformation out there for a long time. Journalists are trying to do the same thing. I think probably everyone on this call is trying to encourage their students to think really critically. Yeah, I don't know. I have lots of thoughts on this, more than 2 minutes worth, but I will say I just was listening to something the other day about kind of the debate between how much social media companies should like censor or flag items, because there's the whole free speech issue compared to just flat out lies that are spreading like wildfire online. And I think it's a really challenging conversation to have. And I don't know the answer. All I know is your friendly librarians have lots of strategies for how to help students approach different types of information and evaluate it beyond just like a checklist, right? We've moved beyond looking at a website and deciding if it's good or not. We have to look at other websites and what other people have said about that website and do all this lateral reading to even come to a decision in a lot of cases. So much fact checking and all these other things we want. But when I work with students, I really just encourage them, like, whose voices are missing from whatever you're looking at. Look at the authors, stalk them on Google, right? Figure out where they're coming from. If so many different conversations around this, but I think that's part of the challenge with and language too, right? We used to be able to say, is the punctuation messed up, right? Is the grammar incorrect? That means it's not as good of a source. That might not always be the case now. So that's a challenge as well.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, well, I want to respect your time. So it is 1 o'clock, and I am going to make sure that I download this file of the chat, because I want to make sure that we have that as part of this conversation. It's very difficult for me to end this conversation because it's been so much fun. So perhaps we can just stay in touch. If you find yourself incorporating anything into your teaching or into your thinking from this book, or even perhaps even in response to this book, so if it's going a different direction, just send it to me and I'll share it with this group, and we'll just maybe kind of keep this conversation going online as we move into the next semester, because this is fun, even though I know it's kind of painful as well. And so but it's it's a nice distraction from what we're all facing right now. So I think that this is good. So I'll just try to keep this going a little bit by sending stuff around, and you guys can send stuff to me too. Okay.
Thank you so
Tiffany.
much to all of you. I mean, it's just really been very helpful to me.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Are you-
Tiffany.
Oh, sorry.
Are you suggesting us using internet to continue a face-to-face conversation? Is that what we're doing?
I'm suggesting
Only if you
that.
use formal writing.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Well, it has been such a pleasure. I'm going to make sure that I can save this file now. Yep. Okay. I guess I did. I don't know if I did it right, but I'll make sure I did that, and I will just be in touch with you all. Okay. And thank you for
so
joining
much.
us, Caleb. It was lovely to have you here.
Tiffany, don't we have another book ready for next semester? Oh, I know. It's the
It's why students
they
can't
can't write.
Why students can't write. Yeah.
And if you have not read that book, Tiffany
It's
will
really
be
good.
Tiffany's next movie will be her next showing will be. Anyway, next semester we're going to be using the Why They Can't Write book, and doing another learning community. So even if you've read the book, this might be a great time to, I mean, you can always join these multiple times. So
Yeah, we'll make sure to send out the message to you all.
Okay.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
I'm gonna have to stay on to see if I can get this saved. So I'm gonna
Happy Thanksgiving.
you too, Lily.
Hey, Tiffany, I'm
Yeah.
still signed up for a couple Canvas courses with you.
Okay.
And I'm just letting you know that I'm not totally blowing them off, even though I haven't gotten to them yet. So
Don't worry, no problem
right.
at all. Totally, it's like the absolute self-paced courses.
Awesome.
Christine, because you're even mentioning it, you're further ahead than a lot of people in those courses.
Oh,
So,
good.
including myself, who has been in one of those courses for 2 years, I think.
Oh, good. Because I've only been in there for a year. So
Yeah, I'll let you know if I graduate, and then you can start thinking about it.
okay. Sounds like a plan.
It's
Oh,
good to
good, I
see you,
see.
Christine.
Good to see you too. I'll see you
Yeah.
later.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. See ya. I need to see. Okay, I think I have saved the chat. Hang on.
If you're just doing awesome with these,
This
You
one,
have
well, this
picked
one was
some
so
of the-
good.
you have picked some of the best books, and I just want these conversations to keep going. And you know, this is typical of learning communities. I'm wondering, I think it's worth thinking about, like, what are next steps?
Like after learning community.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe the action part of learning in action communities doesn't necessarily have to be, how are you going to apply it in your classroom? Although, I mean, that's a great,
Mhm. Oh,
but
wait, let me
it's
stop.
almost
Hold
like-
on. I want to stop recording.